The gentlelady not only for yielding, but for her extensive work on these issues, not only during our hearings, but during the many depositions we've taken to develop evidence and to bring it forward for the majority, the minority, and all of the country.
Did you give us that evidence?
I know that if the gentlelady from
Are you going to give us that evidence?
Was able to speak, that she'd certainly be eager to do so. Mr. Allen, we just astonishingly heard a Democrat on this committee question your allegiance to the United States. How many tours in Iraq did you do?
I did 2 tours in Iraq, sir.
And for how many decades have you held a security clearance?
For 2 decades, sir.
Ever been called into question before?
No, sir.
And you also received the Employee of the Year Award for the Charlotte Field Office, is that right?
That is correct, sir.
Did you receive any medals during your service for the Marine Corps and the United States Navy?
I did, sir. As a member of the Marine Corps, I received a Navy Commendation Medal and a Navy Achievement Medal.
Seems to me your allegiance to the United States is pretty well established over multiple decades, wearing the uniform, fighting for our country, and I am proud that you continue to fight for our country as a whistleblower here, making a disclosure to the United States Congress. And Mr. Allen, is it your belief that you were retaliated against because you shared an email that questioned the truthfulness of FBI Director Christopher Wray?
Yes, sir.
And you believed that he wasn't truthful based on testimony he'd given to the United States Senate, isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And in that testimony to the Senate, you believed that Christopher Wray indicated that there were no confidential informants and no FBI assets that were present at the Capitol on January 6th that were part of the violent riot. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
Please play the video. We're now going to hear from George Hill, who worked at the Boston field office.
The SSA in Boston said they were going to a political rally, which is First Amendment protected activity. No, we're not uploading. We're not starting cases on these people. To which they said, well, we're going to call your SAC. And the SSA said, go right ahead. Because when you're pushing back, you want to make sure that you have your 6 covered. So the SAC and the ASAC were intimately aware of these kinds of exchanges that were going on. And again, to his credit, Joe Bonavolonta said, no, we're not opening up cases on people who went to a rally. And I forgot a key part. The SSA for CT2 said, happy to do it. Show us where they were inside the Capitol, and we'll look into it. To which WFO said, we can't show you those videos unless you can tell us the exact time and place those individuals were inside the Capitol. To which the SSA responded back, and I was privy to these conversations firsthand, why can't you show us, why can't you just send us, give us access to the 11,000 hours of video that's available? Because there may be UC's, undercover officers, or CHS's confidential human sources on those videos whose identity we need to protect.
So, Mr. Allen, you got retaliated against for the very thing, for saying the very thing that the Washington field office was telling Boston, when the Boston field office was saying, we're not going to go and investigate people that just showed up at a rally without sufficient criminal predicate. The Washington field office told Boston, well, you know what, we can't give you the evidence because it might disclose the very CIs and UCs that you are concerned about. But that doesn't surprise you, Mr. O'Boyle, does it?
No, sir.
And the reason it doesn't surprise you is that in a different part of the country, you saw that same pressure from the Washington field office. And did they ever try to get you to do something that was outside the normal order of law enforcement activity?
Yes, sir.
And what did the Washington field office try to get you to do that violated the law and regulations?
They tried to get me to serve a federal grand jury subpoena when there was no proper predicate to do so.
And the reason there was no predicate was because it was based on an anonymous tip, right?
That's correct.
And time and again, the Washington field office was trying to pressure you without corroboration to go start process on people. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And so while I agree that January 6th was a violent day, a bad day, a day that nobody wants to relive, violence on January 6th doesn't justify weaponizing the government against people who were innocent and did nothing wrong. Thank you for blowing the whistle on that. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a sincere point of inquiry. Rule 11, Clause 2.
The gentleman is not recognized.
I have a question about the rules.
Mr. Lynch for 5 minutes.
It's a point of order, a question about the rules.
Point of order. State your point of order.
The point of order is why does Rule 11, Clause 2, subsection E1A not apply to this subcommittee? I can read for you. Each committee shall keep a complete record of all committee action, which shall include, in the case of a meeting or hearing transcript, a substantially verbatim account of remarks actually made during the proceedings, subject only to some technical things. Such records shall be the property of the House, and each member, delegate, and the resident commissioner shall have access thereto. Why does that not apply? Where is the whistleblower exception in the rules of Congress that says that does not apply?
It's the prerogative of the committee to decide.
No, it's not. It's the rules of the House.
We have the whistleblower testimony. The whistleblower does not wish that to be made available to the Democrats at this time.
The whistleblower doesn't make committee rules, sir.
Mr. Lynch is recognized for 5 minutes of questioning.
Mr. Chairman, is the ruling of the chair always unquestioned, or do we have a vote on how some of these issues are decided?
If you state a proper point of order, and there's some kind
I just did state a point of order.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 5 minutes of question.
Mr. Friend, I want to ask some questions about surrounding the circumstances of the removal of your clearance by the FBI. Mr. Friend, I'd like to ask you about your move to the domestic terrorism unit. You originally transferred to Daytona from the FBI's Omaha field office, Sioux City Residence Agency in June 2021, is that correct?
Yes.
And you were assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force at the end of September 2021, correct?
Yes, I was reassigned.
Okay. And you had been exclusively working on child sex abuse material known as CSAM cases, is that correct?
Prior to that point, yes.
And that was before you moved to the JTTF, isn't that right?
Yes.
Did you stop working on child abuse cases after October 1st, 2021?
No, I did not.
Well, in fact, the FBI planned to find a replacement for you when you moved from one position to the other, is that correct?
Which office are you referring to?
So, when you were moved from the child sexual abuse cases and moved to the JTTF, you were informed that the FBI would find a replacement for your other position. Was that correct?
No, that's not correct at all. I was told that those cases were going to be considered a local matter going forward. They would not be resourced, and that I was going to be reassigned to work on domestic terrorism cases. At the time, my supervisor retired, and his interim told me there was not enough work to do. So until a full-time replacement could come in to continue to work on the child pornography investigations and make myself available for domestic terrorism cases. And then when my new supervisor arrived early in 2022, I explained that arrangement to him, and he agreed that that was the best use of my time, even though I was told to, on my timesheet, account for my actions as being solely devoted to domestic terrorism. I was in a situation where I was essentially only working child pornography and human trafficking cases.
I just want to point out that in your interview with the committee, you stated that you were told you could balance both until a permanent replacement arrived. That was during your transcribed interview. Are you restating that or disputing that now?
I'm not disputing that. I was unofficially said, just keep doing what you're doing, but on paper and on your timesheet, we're going to put you down as a domestic terrorism agent.
You said here that they told you you could balance both responsibilities until your replacement arrived. Are you disputing that now?
I'm disputing that there was no replacement that was going to be arriving, ever. I was told that that violation was not going to be worked after I was moved over to the Joint Terrorism Task Force. Then subsequently,
But here you're saying that you were allowed to do both jobs until your replacement arrived. So your assumption then was not that the replacement was not going to arrive, right?
Are you talking about a replacement as for my supervisor or a replacement for me?
For the responsibilities that you were doing under the child sex abuse cases.
There was no replacement that was going to arrive in our office for that. Those cases were going to be no longer worked.
That would be a conjecture on your part at that point, right?
No, I was told that.
Okay. You continued to work the child abuse cases until you were suspended in 2022, correct?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, you even received an award for your CSAM work in July 2022, correct?
Yes.
Now, you got this award after you took on all the child exploitation cases for the local sheriff's officer earlier that same year, while also working your JTTF responsibilities, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You took on the role of a full-time employee assigned to work child abuse investigation cases, correct?
I took on the role of whatever I was needed to work. I made myself available to work domestic terrorism, but there was not enough work to do.
So could you tell us that you were reassigned? And so first you tell us that you were reassigned and told that the CSAM cases weren't a priority. Then you tell us that not only did they plan on replacing you, they let you continue working those cases until you were suspended. Is that correct?
Yes, it was no longer a priority on paper. This is the way that the FBI allocates its manpower resources. So on paper, I was not supposed to be recording my work on those cases. But then within my office, which was not in the Jacksonville headquarters, my frontline supervisor agreed that my time was better spent working on CSAM cases.
All right, Mr. Chairman, my time has expired.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentlelady.